Hot dog is my favorite meat.
There's some problems here. Sorry, big time.
I'm so upset. Oh my God.
Hot dog is my favorite meat.
Welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Adam Mockler on today from the Adam Mockler Show. Adam, welcome, brother. How you doing?
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to chat. This is our first time chatting, so we're going to go through a lot of good news. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having for coming on. Although I would argue on whether the news is good or not. So the first story's got good news for us. The rest, so. So guys, what we're going to talk about tonight is we've got polling showing that Trump's in disastrous shape. A little bit later in the program, we've got a couple of what we do. Abdul El-Sayed is being outspent 25-1 by Israel, a foreign country. The reporter's like, I can't tell. Is it Norway? Is it Argentina? I can't tell who's spending all the money. We'll clarify it for you guys. And it is National Hot Dog Day, so I want you to celebrate that. In fact, we're gonna talk about that a little bit later in the show. And huge, JD Vance won on Joe Rogan, and he says that Iran has military advantage over us in some ways. That was an interesting admission. But the admission we did not get was how Israel controls American decisions, including the decision to go to war in Iran. But all those clips are coming up. Let's start with the first story.
So how's the president doing on foreign policy?
Bad. I mean, he came into office, during the campaign, I'm gonna end the wars. Well, the wars aren't ending.
No, they're not, and they're in disastrous shape. We're gonna get to the polling in a second, but first, Adam, thoughts on Trump's strategy of I'll run on anti-war, then I'll be the most pro-war president you could have.
Yeah, Trump keeps having this line about ending 8, 9, or 10 wars. And I guess the question is, are they all just wars he's begun at this point? Because he's ended this Iran war 20 separate times and doesn't seem to be able to find an off-ramp. He promised to be the no new wars president. Now, all of us are watching as he struggles to jump from the Iran war to Venezuela, even threatening Greenland. What I really want to point out is that we've all seen this story before. We've seen US politicians and neocons lie about the Middle East. They said that we were winning against Iraq, we were winning against Afghanistan, that the bad guys were being taken out. And then it turns into decades and decades of a grinding counterinsurgency where it turns out the US was losing. We're spending trillions of dollars on these failing wars. And now they want to repeat this exact same thing. They're trying to gaslight Gen Zers and every generation by saying, we're gonna win, that this war is going well, that it's gonna benefit us. I don't believe a single word they're saying. We've lost over a dozen US troops. We've spent all of this money. We've destabilized the region more. We've killed thousands of people, not only throughout Lebanon and throughout the Middle East. And on top of that, we can't get control of Israel. Israel is breaking these ceasefires before they're even beginning. It's humiliating for the United States.
Indeed. In fact, it's such a retread of the old movie. Condoleezza Rice came out today saying we got to attack them over there before they attack us over here. I mean, and I remember the media saying, oh, we're gonna learn our lessons. We're not gonna repeat those false allegations of weapons of mass destruction. Right now, they're all screaming their heads off, weapons of mass destruction, which don't exist, just like in Iraq. And by the way, Adam's right. Today, Trump went back to threatening Cuba because we don't have enough wars. And again, Adam, you're so right. I don't know if he realizes ending a war doesn't count if you started it. But now, the good news is, unlike Iraq, when it first began, we were on there because we're ancient. And at that point, it was still a popular war because mainstream media had lied through their teeth to pretend that Iraq had attacked us. They lied and lied and lied us into that war. We found out later, of course, it was for Israel. And now, though, they have not done a very good job of doing propaganda for this war. So the American people have caught on. It's not just us. Watch.
In 2024 versus Kamala Harris, foreign policy was a strength for this president. He was trusted more in foreign policy than Kamala Harris by a 10-point margin. Among independents, he was trusted more by 14 points. Come over to this side of the screen. The net approval now on foreign policy in 2026. Down he goes, right into the Strait of Hormuz. Look at this. 22 points in the negative direction, a minus 22-point net approval rating. That is a drop of over 30 points. And among independents, he is now at minus 30 points. You know I love those notes at the bottom of the screen, Johnny B. So that is a movement of 44 points among independents.
Yeah. So look, I've got more polling and Trump's reaction to it, but Adam, I'm gonna bring you back in here. So first off, I mean, look, doesn't this seem obvious? Both parties say that they're going to be anti-war. They get into office, they are pro-war, and then, yeah, the Republicans definitely do it more than Democrats. But the Democrats break all their promises to the point where people didn't believe Kamala Harris because Joe Biden said that, oh my God, we're going to keep the Israelis in check and we're worried about the Palestinians, and then he handed them a $21 billion thank you check for the genocide. So, wouldn't it make sense for one party to just do what they said and that would result in massive landslides for as long as the eye can see? And B, isn't it kind of obvious that neither side is doing what we want because of the donors? They don't care about the voters at all. And it's not just Israel, also the defense contractors in this case.
Yeah, I mean, people point this out, but Israel and AIPAC are a really good litmus test for my generation and other generations to see if these politicians actually stay true to their word or if they are easily swayed by these special interest groups. And like you pointed out, it's not just AIPAC. There's defense contractors, there's healthcare lobbyists, housing lobbyists, people who want to distort the incentives of politicians, and they're successfully doing so. When it comes to this war, I just want to play around in their framework for 1 second. So when Donald Trump started this war, he listed about 4 different goals. Regime change, he said no more missiles, no more nukes, and he said no more funding of the proxies. And that's burned into my brain because I sat across from Scott Jennings and these people debating week after week, and they kept promising that all of this would come. Now we can debate whether or not they're actually trying to create nukes. I don't think so. But even if we were to concede to that framework, they have not achieved any of their goals. They still are doing the same thing. We've actually probably created an even stronger situation for Iran because now they have control over the Strait of Hormuz and now they can toll the Strait of Hormuz. We have gotten nothing out of this while eating all of the cost. So we're going to war on behalf of Israel, which Marco Rubio admitted early on. We're bearing all of the cost of this war. We're sending hundreds of billions of dollars. We're sending our troops, we're sending our equipment, we're sending our missiles, and we haven't gotten any of the concessions that were stated by this administration, right?
Yeah, so you're right. There's 2 different factors. Number one, American people didn't want this war in the first place. It was about 80% didn't want it. And now it's going terribly and we're not getting any of the so-called stated goals. So now that's a double whammy for him. In fact, that leads to these latest results.
The president said he was going to end the Russian war on Ukraine in 1 day.
Yeah, he said he was going to end it in 1 day. Well, I don't know about you, but here in reality, the war is still going on. And obviously that has been in the news very much recently. And you could see it right here, Trump in the Russia-Ukraine war. Look at this, in 2024, again, it was a strength for him. Slightly more trusted than Kamala Harris by 2 points. You come over to this side of the screen. Again, the net approval, the shift very much in the negative direction. Down he goes, now at minus 19 points. That's a 20-point switcheroo. And among independents, we're talking about a shift from plus 7 points, them trusting Donald Trump more on the Russia-Ukraine war, to now his net approval rating, negative 36 points. Again, over a 40-point shift away from the President of the United States. Trump's net approval rating in Iran, in March it was minus 19 points. You talk about here, look at this. Again, you start in the negative at minus 19 points. You say it can't get any worse. It absolutely has gotten worse. We're talking now minus 28 points, a shift again of about 10 points in the negative direction from an already low.
So Adam, the CNN is doing a fine job of reporting what the polling results actually are, and that's helpful. But overall, as you see presidents, both Biden and Trump, on purpose deciding to be less popular, significantly, massively less popular, which is supposed to be the opposite of what they're supposed to do. And you see none of the reporters can figure out why. They're not even trying to figure out why. And the answer is obvious, it's their donors. So it's impossible not to get frustrated by corporate media saying that, no, we're the worst reporters in the world. We can't figure out why the politicians are choosing to lose elections, choosing to be unpopular. It's the money, Lebowski. Am I missing anything?
No, you know, to add on to that too, I think corporate media disappointed me a bit after Lindsey Graham passed away. Like, no one has to dance on his grave right away. Corporate media, I don't expect them to do that. But right after Lindsey Graham passed, all of these corporate media anchors were coming out with these really sappy posts. It'll be like them and Lindsey Graham with thumbs up. And it would be like, I spent decades being very close with Lindsey Graham. It was really disappointing seeing this type of whitewashing of somebody's legacy, somebody who brought us to war, somebody who defended these wars until his very, very last day. So corporate media clearly has a problem where they feel like they're forced to play defense or walk certain lines. But the fact of the reality is, Trump said he would have no new wars. Now gas prices are up nationwide, and there is no end to this war. We have no end in sight. It's really interesting because when Trump did sign the memorandum, there was one clause in the memorandum of understanding that said Israel should withdraw its troops from southern Lebanon. The memorandum was dead on arrival because Israel refused to withdraw his troops. Bibi Netanyahu is a war criminal. He has no incentive to withdraw these troops. So think about this. Our gas prices are spiking. We are stuck in this war, and it's because Israel is breaking the ceasefires or breaking the memorandums as they are being introduced. It's just like this treadmill of Trump being played by the Iranians, not being able to figure it out, and Netanyahu continuing to break whatever sort of deal maybe happens. It's just all a song and dance that is hurting the American people. It's no surprise Trump's popularity is dipping. When it comes to Russia and Ukraine, I mean, Trump has lost any moral high ground to speak about this issue, not only because of his distorted view on foreign policy, but when we're funding Israel actively, when we're threatening Greenland in this same way, I don't think Trump has any moral high ground to talk about no new wars in this manner.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that the corporate media has no moral high ground at all or no morality at all. Because, I mean, Lindsey Graham advocated for the Iraq war that got hundreds of thousands of civilians killed. That's not a little thing. They're like, yeah, but I knew Lindsey Graham. I don't care that you knew Lindsey Graham. Oh, but I was friends with Lindsey Graham. That's actually the core of the problem. You're a reporter, you're supposed to challenge the government, not kiss their ass, especially a warmonger monster like Lindsey Graham. 23,000 dead kids in Gaza, but our press is so much worried about the feelings of the Israelis and whether they've been offended. And the Israeli supporters, oh, are you offended? Who gives a damn? How about you care about the 23,000 dead kids? But speaking of monsters, last video is from Trump.
Do you anticipate that the strikes we're seeing this week against Iran will expand? Are you considering hitting energy targets or other locations inside of Iran?
I'll save the energy targets for last, but ultimately we'll hit energy targets, yeah. But we're gonna hit them very hard tonight. We're going to hit them very hard tomorrow night. We're going to hit them very hard the night after. And then next week it gets really bad for them because next week comes the power plants. Next week comes the bridges. We're going to knock out all their power plants. We're going to knock out all their bridges unless they get to the table and negotiate.
So there he admits to being a war criminal and hitting civilian infrastructure, but we're used to Donald Trump being a monster. So Adam, I'm going to end on an impossible question. So JD Vance said on Rogan's show today that, oh, we're still in the middle of peace negotiations and we're going to get a deal, and and we're going to cover that more in earnest a little bit later in the show. But here's Trump saying basically, all we're going to do is bomb them and bomb them and bomb them, and we're going to destroy their civilian infrastructure and we're going to commit war crimes. So the reason it's impossible, can anyone tell what the hell they're talking about? Are we in the middle of peace negotiations or are we in the middle of full throttle war? They can't seem to make up their mind.
I think the desperation is emblematic of Donald Trump being backed in a corner. So they're trying to use the carrot and the stick at the same time. They're trying to use the carrot to entice Iran during the negotiations, and they're trying to use the stick to threaten and bomb Iran during the war, but neither of them are working. So for the past few months, you've seen Donald Trump vacillate between the carrot and the stick, trying to figure out some sort of strategy. But Iran is waging asymmetric warfare. I mean, JD Vance says it at some point in the Joe Rogan episode. Iran has a strategy to continue to bleed concessions out of the United States. And even if we do have a stronger military, all that it takes is one missile aimed at the Strait of Hormuz, and they have leverage over us. So the carrot's not working. The stick is not working. Anytime we try to sign a memorandum, Israel de facto breaks it almost immediately by having troops in southern Lebanon or bombing Beirut or bombing Lebanon proper. There is no way for Trump to exit this war. And I will point out that actually gives an opening for Iran to continue to squeeze as many concessions as they can out of the United States, to continue to squeeze concessions in these negotiations. And I think that's why Trump is so desperate right now, because he's backed into a corner.
Yes, and I don't think you could bomb your way out of that corner. I think we had a good deal with them that we should just complete, which is they're not gonna have a nuclear weapons program. We're gonna open up the Strait of Hormuz. Stop the frickin' bombing. And of course, as Adam and I have both pointed out, and any rational person can see, there's a reason why we continue in this war, because there's only one country that wants it. But unfortunately, that country, Israel, controls the overwhelming majority of our politicians here in America. So we're being ordered back into war, and war is what we're gonna get. Okay, so now, speaking of that, let's move on to our next story. The Israelis are furious that they've hired Trump loyalist Brad Parscale, and he hasn't been able to deliver the hasbara that they're looking for. Now, he's given them a ton of propaganda, and we'll show you the propaganda they have purchased inside this country. But before we give you all the facts that show you how much the Israelis are trying to manipulate Americans into supporting Israel and against our own interests, I want to bring in Adam Mockler here again. Adam, so I'm told by corporate media that poor little Israel has no influence in this country at all, and that if you actually quote facts about it, you're an anti-Semite. Now, you read the story from Time magazine. Are facts anti-Semitic?
No, the reality is the AIPAC lobby and the Israel First lobby is perhaps the most insidious force in politics right now. You can see the distortion of our politicians' incentives, and you can see them in real time take increasingly less popular positions due to the way money distorts those incentives. Do you remember that clip, Cenk, of Donald Trump? I think he was in Israel, and he's talking about Miriam Adelson, who shelled out over $100 million. And he's joking around, but he's not really joking. And he's like, I asked Miriam behind the scenes if she's more loyal to Israel or the United States, and she wouldn't answer, which probably means Israel. Donald Trump literally gave away the game right there. He gave away the game. Since getting into office, he has then fast-tracked a lot more aid to Israel. He has fast-tracked weapons packages and expedited weapons for Israel to continue their genocide in Gaza and continue their settlements in the West Bank. So when Donald Trump is out there admitting that he is being influenced by his largest donors, you don't have to guess. Now, I will say, as a young Gen Zer, there are people in my generation who can go super, super off the rails in both directions, either be super pro-Israel, or I have had conversations with people where they're anti-Semitic, but just calling out the money that's distorting our politics, not at all anti-Semitic, not at all.
Yeah, not 1%. That's a weaponization, which is disgusting, by the way. If you're on the left, you should never weaponize racism, bigotry, or anti-Semitism, because that actually hurts the cause of fighting those serious, insidious forces. So I'll add to what Adam said and then move to the piece, because it's got amazing facts about how they're doing propaganda inside our own country. Donald Trump also said on tape that he moved our embassy in Israel because the Adelsons gave him so much money. Both Sheldon and Miriam. It's amazing what he admits on tape. He also released Jonathan Pollard back to Israel because the Adelsons asked him to. In fact, the Adelsons then flew Jonathan Pollard, the traitor that stole all of our intelligence and gave it to Israel. They flew him back on their private jet and gave him a party when he arrived in Israel. So obviously they like Israel, love Israel more than they love America. In fact, I don't know that they like America at all. I think that the Adelsons were here to basically manipulate this country and to bribe our politicians to help their beloved Israel. And if you're unclear about that, Mary Madelson said on tape that she would give Donald Trump $250 million to trash our Constitution and run for a third term so she can get even more for Israel. So this is open bribery, open propaganda. So now we go to Time Magazine, and I criticize corporate media all the time, but I love giving credit where credit is due. I criticize them because they earned it. In this case, Time Magazine with a terrific story about actual facts. So they explained last September, the global ad agency Havas hired Parscale's firm, Clock Tower X, to conduct a digital campaign on behalf of the state of Israel, according to Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, filings reviewed by Time. So now, credit to Parscale there because he actually registered as a foreign agent. So most of the people who are Israeli assets in this country do not register. They pretend to be Americans and working for American interests when they're doing no such thing. But in his case, at least he was clear enough that he's like, yes, I'm going to get millions of dollars from Israel. I'm going to try to manipulate the American people on behalf of that foreign country. So I am a foreign agent. So thank you for the honesty, we appreciate it. So they created over 100 pieces of content every month, and most of it was aimed at Gen Z. So Time explains Parscale vowed the effort to produce at least 50 million digital impressions per month, as well as influence how AI tools such as OpenAI's ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, and Google's Gemini characterize Israel and the war. So they're going to do this propaganda all over online to try to influence the younger generation, but they're also going directly to the AI companies and saying just cheat. Make sure that your AI does not tell the truth. Instead, remember, this is a literal foreign agent working for Israel, going to the AI companies and say, manipulate your programs to support Israeli propaganda. And he's not the only one. We showed you a video a couple of weeks ago of another radical Zionist saying on tape in a panel discussing about how they're gonna influence America and the world to help Israel, saying, oh yeah, we talk to the AI companies all the time to get them to change their
Media is another conservative organization that works with Scott Jennings. There is a lot of influence going on in our media, and it's because they are scared. They are scared of the sea change that is especially seen in younger generations, and it's because we're not beholden to corporate media. We're not beholden to listening to all of these corporate politicians. We have a decentralized way, like the Young Turks or like TikTok or these other platforms, to see what is actually happening on the ground. And this type of finger wagging against Gen Zers, saying that we're too radical, that we are going off to the side, we're going to the extremes, it's not gonna work. What I find radical is living in a system where we're forced to accumulate hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt and medical debt while we're sending bombs overseas and sending money to Israel. The system is radical itself. I find it radical that many Gen Zers are one medical bill away from not being able to pay their rent. I find it radical that Gen Zers can't find jobs, and yet all of this reductive finger wagging comes from these right-wing neocon people who say, you're radical for liking Zohran Mamdani. You guys are far left communists for liking Zohran Mamdani and these politicians. If you want young people to be invested in this system or any system, allow them to have some sort of stake in the system. When the system is constantly crushing us down at our shoulders, of course we're gonna be taking positions like, hey, F the current institutions, F Israel, F these distortionary special interest groups that are currently reaching in and screwing us over. And as young people begin to realize this and wake up more and more, you see more resistance from the Israeli government or just from neocons who want to change the way that young people think, and it's not going to work. Our lived experiences right now are of that in an institution that isn't really working for anybody. I'm just giving my youth Gen Z framework here. And Gen Zers aren't so impressionable that some ad from like Scott Jennings or some right-wing from Ben Gvir is going to change our mind. It's not going to work.
Yeah. To your point, a couple points. Number one, you know what's radical? Genocide. Genocide is about as radical as it gets, and our media tells us, no, that's perfectly normal, but you complaining about it is radical. Okay, and Salem Media Network, you know who their chief strategy officer is? Brad Parscale. So the same guy being given millions of dollars to do propaganda for Israel. Now, Salem says, no, legally you're not allowed to have this propaganda go on radio. It's just our chief strategy officer, and everyone who works at Salem is massively pro-Israel. Coincidentally, even though they're all getting paid tons and tons of money from Salem, and Parscale, their chief strategy officer, is getting tons and tons of money from Israel. So no, this is super obvious. They're literally buying our media to try to manipulate us. In fact, now let's go to the next part of it. Publicly, the campaign was framed as an effort to combat rising anti-Semitism online. An Israeli foreign ministry official familiar with the arrangement says there was another strategic aim preventing young conservatives from turning against Israel. So thank you for the confession. It had nothing to do with combating anti-Semitism. Obviously, it's the Israeli government saying that Americans should be pro-Israel. It has nothing to do with anti-Semitism, everything to do with trying to contain the damage that they've done with the genocide and all the wars and all the manipulation and all the bribing of our Congress people. So through private group chats, Time explains, 3 people familiar with the campaign say conservative influencers receive suggested language for posts on social media sites such as X, Instagram, and TikTok. They were then compensated based on the impressions and engagement their content generated. So unquestionable. So if you're seeing someone there going, oh, I love Israel, it's not a genocide, murdering 23,000 kids is totally okay. The Palestinians had it coming, it's all the Muslims' fault, and you should hate them and you should be bigoted against Muslims. That was probably paid for by the Israeli government, so that you'll hate Muslims, you'll hate other people, and you'll finance their wars. And now we have overwhelming proof. Now, to Adam's point, yes, but they think, oh, well, in the old days, we would just, buy up the mainstream media companies and they would do our propaganda for us, and that would work brilliantly. So we assume the Gen Z will be the same. We'll just be able to brainwash them. Well, did they? Did it work? Well, let's find out. An anonymous Israeli official with knowledge of this psyop said, quote, "We are pissed at Brad Parscale. He was supposed to make things better. We paid him lots of money, but what did he do with it? Things have only gotten worse." Yeah, brother, look, to be fair to Brad Parscale, that's probably the only time I'll ever begin a sentence that way. What do you want him to do? You pushed us into another war. That war is going disastrously. And you're like, well, I don't care. I demand that you merge our militaries. I demand you work for Israel and go die for Israel. And you think that schmuck who never had anything to do with anything in the first place is going to single-handedly be able to move the entire Gen Z and brainwash them? No, no, no. This isn't like the old days when you had complete control over corporate media. Okay, now the walls are breached and we know exactly what's going on. So then let's go to an anonymous U.S. intelligence official, because there's deep concerns here, obviously. We're talking about American influencers who are being paid by a foreign country, then trying to build momentum to change the president's views or the views of others around him. It can't be dismissed as inconsequential by any means. And now that's a Trump official, and the Trump officials are pissed because they're like, wait, we've been kissing Israel's ass this entire time. We've done everything they've demanded of us. Now they're doing propaganda saying we need to go back into the war. So they're doing propaganda against Trump. They're like, no, 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 we loved it when you were doing propaganda for Trump, but now that it's against Trump, no, we don't like it. Oh, really? It's almost like they didn't give a damn about you or any American. They only cared about themselves. Of course, of course. We have to explain these simple things to people in Washington with their tiny little heads, and they can't understand. They claim they can't understand simple concepts. And did Parscale have all this influence with Trump in the first place? Well, Parscale hasn't spoken to the president in more than 5 years, according to sources familiar with the matter. And now one last clip for you guys, and we'll bring Adam back in for his thoughts. JD Vance was on Rogan today, and he also talked about this effort to influence the president by Israel. Let's watch.
There was a Times story that came out yesterday that basically there are certain influencers in America who are being paid in order to attack the deal. People are always going to try to influence the United States of America, whether they're allies of ours or whether they're enemies of ours. But again, when I open up the pages of Time magazine and I see that there's a literal foreign influence campaign being funded to tank the very deal that I was pursuing, and oh, by the way, many of the people who were receiving that money were actually attacking me in completely dishonest ways, you know, my response to that is, well, go to hell. I'm going to do what I have to do for the American people. I represent Americans first, and that's the way that I've tried to do this job.
Adam, two things there. First, you know, he's saying go to hell and I'm not going to listen to Israel. But isn't it going to be awkward when we go back into the Iran war and do exactly as Israel ordered us? Then what's JD Vance going to say?
Yeah, I guarantee you if that propaganda were in JD Vance's favor, he would just be completely blind to it and not mention it at all. Also, there's a lot of egg on JD Vance's face right now. As much as he tries to distance himself from this like pro-Israel campaign in this war, he is the one who has been sent to both Geneva, Switzerland, and he got sent to Islamabad, Pakistan, and came out with absolutely nothing. In fact, he came out with a worse position than we came into it with. So he's definitely got a lot of egg on his face. When it comes to this influence campaign, first of all, I wouldn't put it past Israel to launch an overly aggressive campaign that backfires on them, whether it's online or with Iran. Number two, this is just direct paid-to-play foreign influence on U.S. pundits, influencers, probably politicians as well. The type of distortion that Israel and AIPAC are able to achieve in our politics is absurd. And for all the time that we spend calling out Russia for influencing our elections, which I think we should be calling out these countries. A lot of our politicians seem uniquely blind to the Israel lobby trying to constantly influence our politics. And I think you said it very well. It used to be corporate media that would distort the minds of people. Oh, 1 second. Sorry, my camera. It used to be corporate media that would distort the minds of people. Now they're trying to use TikTok as a channel to do that, Twitter as a channel to do that, and it's not working. They're being exposed for it. Young people are waking up, and we're not going to start supporting a country that is literally enacting settlements in the West Bank and a genocide in Gaza. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, and to give you guys a sense of scale here, finally, Israel has a $700 million propaganda budget. That is a lot of money directly meant to influence, manipulate Americans into supporting Israel rather than our own country. Next year, they say their budget is going to go up to $900 million. And to be fair to them, since they've gotten over $320 billion from us, let alone the $8 trillion in wars against their enemies and neighbors, it's money well spent in the past. It's just they're frustrated now that it's not working as well. And I love the younger generation in online media that has stopped their propaganda from working and now wasting a lot of their money. But remember, guys, this whole, whether it's paying influencers $4,000 a pop or spending $700 million on propaganda, pales in comparison to traditional media and why they were so effective with their propaganda for almost my entire life, because massive and radical Zionists like Rupert Murdoch and Larry Ellison own corporate media. Rupert Murdoch owns Wall Street Journal, New York Post, Fox News, and so many other media outlets in the West. Larry Ellison has now bought CNN, CBS, TikTok. And so those are all billions and billions of dollars in investments, and all of that aimed to make sure you don't find out that Israel and America don't have the same interest. Israel has completely different interests, and they want to trick you into supporting their interests and take your money. Let's be honest. They've taken hundreds of billions from us. If you include the war, trillions from us, and they would like to keep that gravy train going. And it's our job to stop it, not because we don't like Israel, that's a different topic. But in this case, on behalf of American sovereignty, so that we actually represent our own voters. And if you care about democracy, you wouldn't just be worried about Trump or Biden. You'd be worried about a different country trying to buy off our politicians and our media to take our sovereignty and our democracy away from us. All right, we're gonna take a quick break here. When we come back, we've got more news on how things are going in terms of the vote on Section 219. Are we going to merge our militaries or not? good news, which is shocking, but then immediately followed up by bad news. We'll do that when we come back. All right, let's go to TYT.com members. Jack C380 says, Adam is a younger Cenk. Sorry, Adam. So that's their opinion. Nerd Ferguson says, we did get one goal, although it was an unstated one, distraction from the Epstein files. Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, I mean, that part worked. Nobody's talking about the Epstein files anymore. And by the way, almost everyone who voted to release them, the original Khanna, Massey, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, almost all of them have been eliminated so far. Only Ro Khanna and Lauren Boebert remain. Moonstorm says, so great to see Adam on TYT. Adam, I go to you every morning to get the news. Bloated Ego says he's already lost 2 wars in the same war, referring to Trump. He's now going for the trifecta. Wang Jun says, awesome, been following Adam for a couple months now. He does great work, cool to see him on TYT. Thank you everybody for writing in on that. Let's go to YouTube members. Ronald Fan says, hey TYT family, and to you, Cenk and Adam, if Trump keeps struggling on foreign policy, it'll be like, boom, he's finished. And you, Cenk and Adam, look awesome. More so than Hegseth. Oh, well, thank you, appreciate that. Francis Stardust says, the kids are all right. Zingers 2.0 says, why are we in the Middle East if they have an advantage? Maybe we should pack our stuff and get out of there. Of course, we have no business in the Middle East. We're only there because Israel has ordered us to be there. Janet B says Adam has a very bright future. He's a very bright president, by the way, as well. So I appreciate all those comments. We'll be right back.
Hot dog is my favorite meat.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk Uygur, Adam Mockler with you guys, and Rose Orozco, thank you for sending a membership gift on YouTube. We appreciate it. I love when people look out for the community and send people membership so they can check out the whole show. We got a bonus episode today with some fun topics, including National Hot Dog Day. We're gonna go back to our favorite clip from Mitt Romney. That's for the members in the bonus episode. You could hit the join button below, or you could do as these 2 wonderful individuals did. Go to tyt.com/join, and that's Enviro07 and UGG. I don't blame you for the handle of UGG. So thank you guys for being part of TYT. All right, now let's go to the next story.
Will that drawing down of foreign aid from the United States to Israel be compensated by the proposal to have a merging of some sort between our Pentagon and your military?
Yeah, I'm calling it from aid to partnership.
It certainly brings up some issues of sovereignty, but we'll have to work that out later.
So, Adam, we've got a lot on this story, including a House vote today and a Senate vote yesterday, and one of them was shocking. But before we get to that, so there's Netanyahu saying, yeah, from aid to partnership. And a lot of the media is reporting is like they don't want any more money. He said in that same interview, no, we want 10 more years of money. Plus, we want to have all of your military technology for free. So isn't this an obvious scam for Israel to get all of our defense spending, $1 to $1.5 trillion for free?
That clip just killed me inside a little bit. Really quickly, I want to say, again, thanks to the audience and thank you for having me on to talk about the youth perspective. It really does mean a lot to be able to, just give the youth generational perspective on shows. But one of the worst ways I think to be honored after I die would be to have Ben Gvir send out a tweet saying that I was Israel's greatest soldier, like he did for Lindsey Graham, and then having Netanyahu go on Fox News and immediately honor you. I could not think of a worse way to be honored. But Netanyahu has been on the Fox News airways a lot, and that clip went super viral because he's basically asking the United States to cede our military sovereignty even more so than we already have. The Fox News host, you have to screw up to have a Fox News host kind of surprised to what Netanyahu was saying, but she's like, we're gonna have to talk a little bit about the question of sovereignty. at the end of the day, those Fox News hosts would be more than willing to do this. It is just more examples of Israel's influence in our military, in our political system, in the way that our military seems to be at the behest of whatever war Netanyahu is trying to start on any given week. I want to keep hammering this point home. Like 7 times since the year has started, ceasefires have been broken by Netanyahu, like on our behalf. Not that Trump wants to tone down anything, but we have Lebanon, we have Gaza, we have Iran, we have all of these wars that Netanyahu continues to wage. And the reality is there is an election coming up in October in Israel, and Netanyahu will absolutely lose because his name was Mr. Iran. They used to call him in Israel Mr. Iran when he was running for office. His entire political goal has been to invade Iran and enact regime change. And it's backfiring on him so much that he now has to float the idea of just combining our militaries. It is despicable, and we have to keep pushing back on that.
Yes, and the idea of merging the militaries is so insane. What if our interests diverge? First of all, they're diverged right now. But what what if they steal our secrets again? Although in this case they wouldn't have to, because we'd be just handing our secrets to them. But like, so are we supposed to say, oh, okay, what if they attack us? I know that sounds absurd, but except it's not absurd. They did it before. They attacked the USS Liberty and killed 34 Americans. So are we supposed to say, no, doesn't matter, merge our militaries, let them have all of our technologies? So nevertheless, the Senate voted on it yesterday, and by a vote of 50 to 46, they said, oh yeah, merge the militaries, give away trillions of dollars for free because we're corrupt sons of bitches who all get paid by AIPAC. Good news is that's not enough votes because they needed to get past the filibuster. So it was defeated in the Senate for now. So it's put into the National Defense Authorization Act. So that's considered a must pass in Washington because they say, well, it funds our defense. Not that we ever do any defense, all we do is offense. So I don't think it has to be funded at all, but it's $1.15 trillion. Plus you have to continue the war in Iran. Plus you have to merge our militaries with Israel. So the Democrats shockingly drew the line. So we'll tell you about what happened in the House in a second, but let me give you more on this. Majority Leader John Thune switched his yes vote to a no in order to make a motion to reconsider the bill at a later date. So that's a Republican, but that's a technical thing. He voted yes in the beginning. He's just trying to bring it back later, and the only way he could do that is if he technically votes no at the end. But 4 senators did not vote. Republicans Jim Justice of West Virginia, Mitch McConnell of Kentucky. Well, I thought he was perfectly fine, that's weird. And Democrats John Fetterman of Pennsylvania and Alex Padilla of California. Fetterman obviously will be punished later by his Israeli handlers for missing that vote. But don't worry, he will show up loyally and vote for Israel later, even though he's pretending to be a Democrat. So let me show you the 50 Republican senators that voted to advance the NDAA. Just so you know, all of the Republicans voted in that direction other than the ones I just listed. And so you should know they're all traitors. They all work for Israel. They want to merge our militaries. They want to spend trillions of dollars to Israel, and they couldn't care less. So now that's called Section 219 in the House bill, the one that merges our militaries. It's called Section 1217 in the Senate version of the bill. And so although most of the Democrats gave a reason of, hey, we are against this war. And remember, this is just, can they have a debate on this? That's where they have the filibuster rules. I'd be shocked if the Democrats held the line. But I'm already shocked that they did the right thing in the Senate in the first vote. So, okay, good. I'm always super happy to take good news. But also, there was another element to this, not just the funding for the war, not just the gargantuan budget for the Pentagon, but also this Section 1217. So, as Senate Democrats, they wrote a letter, and I'm going to tell you who wrote this letter in a second. We should not be providing votes compelling Donald Trump to deepen the U.S. relationship with Netanyahu's extremist government. The people who wrote that letter are Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Merkley, Senator Markley, Senator Elizabeth Warren, and Senator Peter Welch from Vermont, along with the leading person driving this, Senator Van Hollen from Maryland. So it's an absolute pleasure to have Democrats actually on the right side. It almost never happens. And so it's like an enormous relief that they didn't muster up 10 Democratic votes to go with the Republicans. The senators write in the letter that Israel has repeatedly undermined peace efforts in Iran and Lebanon, as it also continues to attack and kill Palestinians in Gaza in violation of the October 2025 Gaza plan. The letter also notes growing opposition to deepening US complicity in Israel's atrocities by sending more weapons there, and it cites the April vote by 40 Senate Democrats in support of blocking weapons to Israel. What's so funny is that I went right after the vote and looked up a ton of articles, and in America, the media doesn't talk about Section 219 or 1217 at all, because they know that if they talk about it, everyone will hate it. So they're like, oh, it's no big deal. We merge our militaries all the time. We did it with Honduras and Kazakhstan the other day. Normal, we're not gonna talk about it. And then you have senators going, no, we don't want this. They're like, shut up, we're not gonna talk about it. We had to go to Al Jazeera, we had to go to Israeli press to find out more about who actually led the effort in America against these provisions. And the lead guy who did that is Senator Van Hollen. Let's look at what he had to say.
A little while ago, I got off the Senate floor where I urged my colleagues to vote no tomorrow to advance the National Defense Authorization Bill. There are two provisions that have gotten very little attention that are kind of crawling through quietly. Both have to do with greater support to the government of Israel. One of them is a provision Netanyahu has taken credit for pushing, which would require more joint defense cooperation between the United States and Israel. We know from our own experience that Israel has previously vetoed our ability to act in our own national security interests when we wanted to send some weapon systems to Ukraine that had been co-produced with Israel. And Israel blocked us from doing it. Another provision mandates that the US government share more intelligence with the government of Israel. Look, we can share intelligence with the government of Israel or any other government when we want. Why would the United States Congress order the executive branch to share more intelligence, regardless of what the government of Israel is doing? Why would we be doing that? We shouldn't. It's not in our national security interest to do it. We can always choose on a case-by-case basis to do whatever we want. Let's not mandate it.
That is so overwhelmingly obvious. I mean, first of all, what does it mean that they blocked us from doing something we wanted to do, the American government did? Why does Israel hold any power over us? Well, there's a very good answer to that. And he says, and then why do we have to mandate that we work with them? I mean, what if they sent in another Jonathan Pollard or 20 Jonathan Pollards and they're doing active espionage or working against our interests? Do we still have to mandate that we give them everything? And of course, the answer to why is because 94% of Congress gets money from the Israeli lobby. So they're bought, they're corrupt, and they don't work for America. And if you're saying, well, Cenk, at least in the Senate, we got a good result there. We did, and I was happy about it. I did a video about it last night. But as I told you, don't get too excited. Go over to the House, they vote on it there. Just happened a little while before the show started. It turns out 104 people voted yes in favor of Thomas Massey's amendment to cut aid to Israel, but 314 said absolutely not. We work for Israel, right? So 314 Israelis, but that's actually the lowest count we've ever had in the US Congress in my lifetime. So Adam, a little bit of good news and then we move backwards anyway. Isn't it the most obvious thing on planet Earth that they're all voting this way because they got paid millions of dollars in campaign contributions to vote that way?
Again, yeah, special interest groups are distorting our politicians and turning them into really pro-Israel shills when they shouldn't be. I also want to say it was really refreshing to hear Senator Van Hollen speak in that manner. Obviously, he's just stating things that should be obvious to all of us, but he was speaking with some moral clarity and he was leading by example and taking a position that would have been unthinkable a few years ago in the mainstream Democratic Party. We have to keep pushing for that position. You made a really, really good point. What if the incentives or what if the interests of both countries begins to differ? We're even seeing that right now. The incentive of Benjamin Netanyahu, the political incentive, is for him to keep this war going as long as he can, because he'll likely go to jail, lose power, and lose everything if he's voted out and he's not this wartime president. He's really just a war criminal. The incentive of Donald Trump seems to be deep down that Trump wants to find an off-ramp. He is like desperately saying that Iran is begging for a deal when it's very clear he just wants to salvage anything before the midterm. So when you have incentives of Netanyahu to keep this going, and Trump probably wants to tone this down, why would we ever, this thumbs up keeps popping up, why would we ever have a joint military with these two countries when the incentives are differing? It's disgusting. One final point. We currently spend $1 trillion per year just on the interest of our debt, just to service the U.S. national debt. A lot of that debt was built up by Donald Trump, by Republican presidents who are going to war on behalf of Israel and Iraq and Afghanistan and other countries. This is going to be a burden that my generation has to bear for the rest of my life. A lot of people, whether you're worried about the debt or not, people should be able to admit that $1 trillion per year just for the interest of our debt is absurd. That's money that could be going towards healthcare, could be going towards social services. But no, we're going to spend more money funding our military, Israel's military, starting more wars. It's despicable and it's expensive.
Last question on this. Hakeem Jeffries voted to keep giving money to Israel, even though 80% of his voters are against funding Israel. Should Hakeem Jeffries be the leader of the Democrats in the House?
No, not if he's going to keep on following the distortionary incentives of special interest groups over what the actual voters of the Democratic Party want. You know, I'm really, when it comes to the Senate, I'm really liking Van Hollen lately. I could see him being a really good leader.
Yes, Van Hollen would be great in the Senate. Ro Khanna is great in the House. So there are good Democrats out there. And as you saw in the Senate, hey, they held the line. Nice job. And so that was a shocking piece of good news. So I guess we'll take our wins where we can get them, but we need a lot more where that came from. Okay, before we run out of time, we got to do one more story for you guys because it just happened today and it's important. Let's go to this.
I'm very frustrated by the Americans and frankly by people in other countries who are like, you cannot negotiate with the Iranians. Well, then what is your proposal to get people to stop shooting at ships in the Strait of Hormuz? You can bomb them. You can take away their radar, you can take away some of their drones and some of their missiles, but it's just too easy to fire at ships in the straits. So you've got to actually be willing to talk and to try to figure out the problem.
So JD Vance was on Joe Rogan's show today, and Adam, we're gonna talk a little bit more later and show you more clips about how he talked about Israel's influence in America, which was really interesting, and what Rogan said was really interesting. But first, right there in that clip, he's basically saying we can't reopen the strait. It's too easy for Iran to close the Strait of Hormuz with simple drones. Meanwhile, Trump is saying, oh, we own the Strait of Hormuz and we're the guardians of the strait. So which one is it?
He's basically laying out what we've all been saying for months, and that's that Iran is able to wage asymmetric warfare on the United States by closing down the strait whenever they want. I think that if we looked at it, the United States does have a stronger military than Iran and most countries in the world because we fund the hell out of it, but Iran doesn't need to fight us militarily. If they can just close down the Strait of Hormuz, they're basically holding like a metaphorical gas nozzle to the head of every single person on the planet, saying that we can basically screw over Trump. We can make him lose the midterms. Because of that, Donald Trump has had to concede over and over and over when we had a deal prior. Listen, I don't think the Obama nuclear deal was perfect, but we didn't have to kill anybody to get it. We didn't have to deplete our military to get it. We didn't have to close down the Strait of Hormuz to get it. Now, Trump said at the beginning of this war, we would have unconditional surrender from Iran. I'm seeing the United States as the one who is unconditionally surrendering right now. We're surrendering control of the Strait of Hormuz. Not that we should have it, but I think that it should be sovereign in an ideal world. And Trump is now threatening a 20% surcharge on ships through the strait. He had to back off this idea, but I thought it was funny. The Iranian foreign minister used that to make a statement like, oh, the world should not deserve a 20% charge on the Strait of Hormuz. How about we just keep it down to 1 to 2%? So they are using Donald Trump's moral depravity to justify their own gripping of the Strait of Hormuz. And you can see that Trump is backed into a corner. JD Vance is laying out the exact situation that has led the United States into this endless war where Iran now has control over the strait. It's despicable and it's expensive for the average American.
I think Obama's deal with Iran was actually excellent and probably the very best thing he did in his term in office. Got rid of their any trace of a nuclear weapons program, really their entire nuclear program. The Strait was open. We didn't have any of these problems, and we didn't have to go to war for it. So anything,
not a single missile fired.
Yeah, no missiles fired. Look, the right wing has done enormous propaganda against that deal, but a lot of them didn't realize back then. Now they're beginning to realize, oh, that wasn't even your propaganda, brother. That was Israel's propaganda. There was nothing wrong with that deal. It avoided war, and a lot of the people who voted for Trump thought that they were voting against war. Well, they've had a rude surprise. And so speaking of which, so don't get used to Vance being honest about our inability to win this war, because he's going to go back to dishonest immediately. Watch.
I think that the goal is certainly good, which is to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And I think that there are obviously a lot of questions about how best to achieve that. There's both a short-term and a long-term piece of it. I think the short-term piece of it is effectively what's already been done, which is you destroy the nuclear sites and you destroy and eliminate the ability to rebuild the nuclear sites. I think there's a longer-term thing, which is where like a lot of the debate is focused on right now, which is that building a nuclear program is hard, but it's not impossible. And it's expensive, but it's actually not even that expensive if you look at, I mean, you could go on YouTube right now and find out how to build an atomic bomb. So part of our Iran policy, and this is where I get frustrated with the people who say you should never negotiate with Iran. Part of our Iran policy is like solving the long-term problem. That if we could create the sort of circumstance where Iran would commit not just to not have a nuclear weapon right now, but over the long term to not try to rebuild that capacity, like, yeah, I think that is a good and valuable thing.
Okay, what utter nonsense. So if we really cared about countries that were rogue states and out of control building nukes, how about North Korea? North Korea built 8 nukes while Donald Trump was in office the first time. He didn't do anything about it, because this isn't about nukes. And Iran never had a nuke, never came close to a nuke. And the Obama deal had ended any chance that they could possibly have a nuke. And Trump ripped it up so they could have a possibility of having a nuke, so they could have an excuse to attack Iran. There's no dispute over this. This is utter garbage. And then he says, oh, but we have to be in this war so that we prevent their ability to go on YouTube and figure out how to make an atomic bomb. How the hell are we gonna do that? Okay, and how many wars are we gonna get into to make sure people don't go on YouTube? So this is insanity, but more insanity from Vance here.
You have 2 elements within the Iranian system. You have, and you sometimes hear hawkish Americans say this, that they're all crazy people. They want to bring about, the 12th Imam and the apocalypse and all that stuff. Right. There are people in Iran who believe that. They're also pragmatists. You've got the crazy people, you've got the pragmatists. The first week after we signed the MOU, we get 20 million barrels a day of oil out of the Strait of Hormuz. That's what it was before the war. The price of oil comes way down. And there are elements, the hardliners in the Iranian system kind of freak out a little bit. They're like, oh, did we just give away our major leverage point? Screw nuclear weapons, we just gave away the so in this MOU. And so there was this kind of freak out in their system. So they shot at a couple ships, we responded. I think that's entirely appropriate, of course. If they're gonna shoot at ships, we are gonna shoot at the people who are shooting at the ships, or we're gonna destroy the facilities that they're using to shoot at ships. So that happens, okay, and then the Iranians are like, oh, no, fine, you're right. We shouldn't have been shooting at ships. So then they come back to the table, and there's a few more days of negotiation. And then the phase that they're in right now is the hardliners have really, really reacted strongly to all the oil that's coming out of the Strait of Hormuz. And they've basically said, we're gonna try to shut this thing down.
Yeah, they said no such thing. They didn't say, oh, we shouldn't have fired at the ships. Really? Give me the quote. I've read the Iranian press, the Israeli press, the American press. They never said that. In fact, what he doesn't tell you is we had pre-approved channels to go through the Strait of Hormuz. We chose to go on non-pre-approved channels to instigate. But what were we instigating? We were trying to figure out, can we create a lane to go through the Strait of Hormuz without Iran's permission? That way we can go back into the war, try to do the regime change that Israel wants, try to destroy Iran without worrying about the Strait of Hormuz. So we've been trying to figure out using the peace negotiations as a way of reopening the strait physically, militarily, and that's why we've had the conflict that we've had recently. So in a little bit, we're gonna show you a bunch of clips where JD Vance talks about Israel's influence in American politics. That's super interesting. But before we go there, Adam, so look, this gets to the very core of the issue, right? Iran's biggest piece of leverage is closing up the strait. Earlier, Vance admits they could do that at any time. Now, it appears that Trump is saying, no, we got the strait and we used the peace negotiations as a ruse to figure out the lane that we could use to open it up and control it. We control it so much, we'd like to charge a 20% toll, as we were talking about earlier, right? So which one is it? And if it turns out that, as we suspect, that the original JD Vance statement is correct, that Iran could close it at any time, what are we doing here? Why are we bothering to have negotiations? If we're just gonna do what Israel wants, why don't we just get to it already? What's this nonsense about?
Like another point to add on to this is that the memorandum was dead on arrival. The memorandum had a specific clause that said Israel had to withdraw its troops from southern Lebanon, stop the invasion, and stop bombing Beirut. Israel did none of those things, which immediately undermined this deal that we had with Iran that was entirely fruitless. So it was DOA. And then Iran and the United States exchanged some blows in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran wasn't the one to originally break this memorandum. And also, if we were to concede JD Vance's framework right here, that there are hardliners that want war in Iran, and then people who want to negotiate in Iran and want peace, then I don't think it helps the negotiators that Donald Trump is basically just lying about what they're talking about. If the negotiators in Iran say that the Strait of Hormuz is under their control for the next 60 days, and then even beyond that, and then Donald Trump says the Strait of Hormuz is under our control, that'll just incentivize the hardliners that JD Vance is referring to continue. I mean, JD Vance is, I don't even want to concede that framework in the first place, but JD Vance is giving a self-defeating argument that basically says Trump is lying entirely. They like to call the Iranians liars who are terrorists and do this, but Trump is the one who has been lying through his teeth every step of the way during these negotiations, which undermines the negotiators on both sides and incentivizes this war to continue spiraling and spiraling and spiraling, which is what Israel wants, like you pointed out.
Yeah, now speaking of what Israel wants, let's go to JD Vance explaining how little or how much influence they have in America. Let's watch.
Why is Israel losing? Why is Israel losing American public opinion?
Well, the narrative is that Israel has a very disproportionate effect on American politics.
Yeah, I see that. I see that narrative. I mean, I actually think that they look, do they try to influence American politics? Yes, but like I said earlier, a lot of other countries do. I think
to the extent that Israel does,
I think some are better at it than others. I think the Israelis are definitely more effective at it than most, but I wouldn't say that they're the only effective country by any means that tries to influence American politics. I just think you have to be self-aware about it. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's a country of 9 million people. We have 330 million people. And so, of course, they're going to try to persuade Americans. They're going to try to move Americans in one direction or another. I think that's just the nature of the beast.
Okay, so they're a little bit more effective than the other countries. Is it? It's just a little bit. They give to 94% of Congress. No other country is within a country mile, not even close. Like, oh, but Qatar and UAE gave money to you to think tanks. Yeah, I don't like that either. Great, I'm happy you're pointing it out. We pointed out. That is microscopic compared to owning 94% of Congress and being the #1 lifetime donor to Donald Trump and Joe Biden and Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and Mike Johnson and almost every major leader we've had in our lifetimes. This is a joke. He knows that Israel controls America 2,000 times more. That's probably, literally 2,000 is too little for whoever's second most on that list. I don't see Canada or the French buying up any of our Congress, let alone most of our Congress. Trying to pretend like it's within the range of normal is absurd. It's not. But I like Rogan's skepticism on it. Here's more.
But it's more than that. The concern is that they're spying on American politicians, that there's concerns about funding, there's concerns about influence, there's concerns about whether or not politicians are, whether they're aligned with Israel or whether they're aligned with the United States first.
Well, there's certainly, like, I definitely get those concerns, But my sense is that the way that all foreign influence works in the United States is people try to manipulate American public opinion, and then from manipulating a public opinion, they try to get the outcomes that they want. I mean, this thing is a very good example of this. So, you know, like we know, I'm telling you, beyond a reasonable doubt, we know that the negotiation strategy that the president has asked us to pursue, and again, with limitations. Like when the Iranians hit ships, the president has been willing to knock the hell out of the Iranians in response. This is not just a negotiation. It's negotiation, it's military, it's all these things. But I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there have been people within the Israeli government who are trying to like actually shift us away from that policy because they want to continue the military campaign.
And there's at least one upside to this interview, which is Vance admitting these things that is obvious to the rest of us, but like mainstream media never, ever talks about it. And in fact, if you say that Israel is trying to influence our politicians to get what they want, and that we went to this war because of Israel, they go, anti-Semite, destroy them. No. You guys are all liars. JD Vance even accidentally admitted it there, okay? And if you want to give him credit, say, okay, he openly admitted it there. Of course, they're pouring, as we did explain in the last segment that we did, they're pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into marketing and propaganda here in America. I mean, right now in Michigan, another topic we'll talk about later in the show, they poured in $50 million into a Senate campaign to make sure that the senator from Michigan represents Israel instead of America. They want to make sure Abdul El-Sayed loses because he's for Americans. And Haley Stevens, they've already given over $20 million to her in the past. And here comes another $50 million. And she says that she went to Congress to serve Israel. So Ted Cruz said the same thing. Fetterman says the same thing. They just blatantly say it. I'm not for America, I'm for Israel. And then our press goes, I don't see it, I don't hear it, no way, I'm not gonna report on it. But last one here is Rogan pressing Vance on whether Israel pushed US into this war specifically.
Do you think that we would have started this war in Iran without the influence of Israel?
I think the president, completely separate from any influence from Israel, believes very strongly, and again, I agree with this, that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon.
Right,
and I
but
think he was
after
willing to do things.
Bombed them in June, right? That was the initial attack, right?
June of last year.
Yeah.
Midnight Hammer, yeah.
Right. Do you think he would have continued with the most recent campaign if it wasn't for the influence of Israel?
Yes, I do.
Really?
I do, yeah. Look, I mean, I think, again, and I see this, and I see it even from people that are in our coalition, and this would be my flip side to the hawks who have been attacking me or the president mercilessly over negotiation. I would sort of turn this back on some of the doves or some of the realists who have been attacking the president of the United States. The idea that Donald Trump is being like blackmailed is crazy to me. Because again, I see the way that he makes decisions. I see the way that he processes this stuff. Like the idea that he picks up the phone with anybody and says, hey, like I'm gonna take orders from you. No, that's just not how Donald Trump operates.
Wait a minute, nobody said blackmailed. Adam, there's a lot of things that happen in those clips. One was the idea that Trump won't get influenced by anyone. He said on tape, I do things for the Adelsons. I moved our embassy for the Adelsons. I'm doing this. I mean, he says it all the time. But wait, Rogan didn't say blackmailed. Nobody said blackmailed. Why did JD Vance talk about whether Trump was being blackmailed?
It's funny because in one breath, JD Vance says, yeah, of course, there's foreign influence campaigns being run in our politics. He's actually rather dismissive and flippant about it, which in my opinion is part of the problem. And then in the next breath, he tries to dismiss the idea that Trump is subject to those same foreign influence campaigns. But it is kind of weird. He uses the word blackmail, which could be a Freudian slip or could be him trying to get ahead of something. At the end of the day, the reporting that I read and that I trust says that Benjamin Netanyahu tried to pitch this exact war to many presidents And Trump was the one who was dumb enough to go into this war. He was the one president who thought that we could maybe get out unscathed. Maybe this would be Venezuela part 2. And since then, he has been dog walked by Benjamin Netanyahu throughout all of these negotiations because the Israelis aren't looking for a way out. Trump has the political incentive to find a way out. So JD Vance's dismissiveness about this foreign influence campaign coming from Israel is part of the problem. You said it well. Like, yes, other countries do want to influence the United States. Qatar, Russia absolutely does. Countries have incentives to influence us, but the problem is Israel has an outsized influence on our politicians in a surgical manner that makes our politicians take these wacky positions, or at the very least stay silent about genocide and settlements in the West Bank. I'm someone who likes to call out Russia's invasion of Ukraine with a lot of moral clarity. And I think you're a hypocrite if you call that out, but can't call out our supposed ally of Israel literally taking over land in the West Bank, evicting people from their homes, murdering people, and then stealing that territory. The fact that every single Democratic politician is not out there sounding the alarm should be a tell that there is some sort of distortionary foreign influence effect on our politics. And JD Vance basically admits it, but tries to write it off in this weirdly dismissive tone. Like, he doesn't take a hard stance, he just dismisses it entirely.
Yeah, so the 3 theories as to why Trump is doing what Israel wants in regards to Iran, and let alone everything else, is he's dumb and got manipulated into it, plausible. He's corrupt and has gotten hundreds of millions of dollars from the Adelsons, let alone the rest of the Israeli lobby. Not just plausible, fact. And now JD Vance has introduced a 3rd idea, which is that he's being blackmailed. Okay, by the way, it's not that he's not the first to think of it. I said that that might be the case a little while back. And of course, when we say it, outrage, right? But apparently even the vice president thinks that that might be an issue. So that's fascinating. Last question though, Adam. And this one's not about Vance or Iran or our foreign policy. It's about Rogan. So Rogan's not known for much pushback, but he did as much pushback as Rogan does there. And he did say to him, hey, listen, didn't we knock out their nuclear facilities in the first go around? What are we doing this for? Wait, are you really saying that Israel doesn't have much influence, or that we would have gotten in this war without it? So are you a little heartened to see the podcasters, the kind of independent, largely independent podcasters like Rogan and others that voted for Trump, like Dave Smith, Tim Dillon, Theo Vaughn, all turn around and go, no, not buying it?
It's very heartening. And honestly, people aren't dumb. Americans aren't dumb. I know that a lot of people in my audience like to act like Joe Rogan is a lost cause or he's some far right guy. I don't even think that's the case. I think Joe Rogan represents the everyman, and a lot of people, well, a very rich everyman, but like he is just as impressionable as the average American is. And just like a lot of young dudes my age and UFC bros, he got caught up in all of this right-wing propaganda, but that doesn't mean he's entirely lost forever. I think that Joe Rogan can very clearly see that this administration lied about the Epstein files, is lying about the Iran war. You see comedians like Theo Vaughn coming out with a lot of moral clarity on Gaza, saying that it's a genocide. So when they have to sit across JD Vance and JD Vance is lying to their faces, they know that the vice president is lying. So again, Joe Rogan has been pushing a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of right-wing slop. I'm not trying to defend him at all, but I think he really just represents a lot of Americans who are very, very worried about the current state of this war. And I think those questions that he was asking, I don't think it's some like plotted out questions that he had written down before. I think he's genuinely just asking, wait a minute, why is this foreign influence here? Why is it so obvious? Why is this war failing? Why are the files not being released? This represents a lot of people. Young dudes my age, young women my age are asking these exact same questions, and the administration can't keep running away from it. Trump can't keep just word vomiting away out of this mess. We are currently in a war that is spiraling. Gas prices are spiking, the files aren't being released, and this foreign influence is rapidly dying as newer generations realize what is happening.
Yeah, so I totally agree with your analysis on Rogan. He's more like the average guy being swayed in one direction and another, but at least he's keeping an open mind. And there was a theory that they were all MAGA cultists and they would all follow Donald Trump like sheep. But the good news has been that no, they haven't so far. It doesn't mean that they agree with everything we say, but it does mean that they have some independent judgment, and that's a relief for sure. Last thing for the audience is we've got a poll up on tyt.com. We're curious what you guys think. How much influence do you think Israel has over the American government? Because this is the biggest issue and one that they just discussed. A is none, B is small amount, D is huge amount, C is huge amount, and D is near complete control. So curious to see how that turns out. tyt.com to vote there. And everybody check out Adam Mockler on his YouTube channel. Adam, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
I just want to say thank you for paving the way with independent media, and thank you for giving a voice to the younger generations. I hope we get to work together more.
All right, love it. Thank you, brother. Thanks for saying that. All right, we're gonna take a quick break here, guys. And when we come back, we've got more news, including AIPAC trying to buy that Senate seat in Michigan. Some amazing facts about that. And now more people are attacking Khanna. How dare he oppose Israel? All right, we'll tell you about it when we return.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reformed, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
I'm wearing one of our pieces of merchandise. So the funny thing about the Dragon Squad, and that's what our viewers call themselves. That's the name of the group, but every individual chooses their own name. You might have Cincinnati Dragon. You might have Harry Potter Dragon. We have a Grandma Sunshine Dragon is one of those that I remember. These are people that like to have an element of themselves, their lives, what's significant to them reflected as a part of the community. But the concept of the Dragon Squad is just something I threw away as a joke. I was mocking the Proud Boys, these like right-wing groups that come up with a name for themselves that they think is cool, but it's actually really lame. And I thought, off the top of my head, I can come up with something that's still kind of lame, but much cooler. And so I threw out Dragon Squad, and I just moved on with my life. But everybody liked it, and so they kept it going, and so we've embraced it. And I think again, this was during the period of the pandemic. I think it was sort of nice to have a renewed sense of community, a feeling that you're a part of something when everything seems so chaotic. And as a result of that, we've got independent artists online streaming, making beautiful digital art of dragons. We've got, we've released a number of pieces of merchandise that people love sending us photos of them. And then by the way, for me personally, people send me, like you can probably see in the background, like a knitted dragon someone sent me. There's a dragon book they sent me, dragon board games they send me. People have done like custom ironworks, making dragon bottle openers. Like the fans are super invested in diamond art and things like that. And so it's great that they send this stuff. Sometime we're gonna have to set up a wall of all of it. But yeah, it's definitely brought the community a lot closer together. The fact that we were no longer in this big studio, I felt a lot more personally attached to people. It felt very immediate. And I know that I personally needed the connection.
Hot dog is my favorite meat. My favorite meat.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk Uygur, Yasmin Aliyah Khan with you guys. Still the best name in the business. Speaking of good names, Phone Lady 63, thank you for upgrading your membership through the join button. You could, if you're a member, look, there's a lot of different ways to help us, and we definitely need it. We are besieged by the same forces we talk about on air all the time. Tons of attacks on our business, nonstop. So you could upgrade through the join button on YouTube, and we really appreciate it. Of course, you could join there as well as Justin Colors just did. You guys are amazing, and we appreciate you. And today's a fun day. It's National Hot Dog Day. We're gonna show you that Mitt Romney video in the bonus episode for the members, so I think you guys will enjoy that. TYT.com/join to become a member, or you could buy our Hot Dogs My Favorite Meat shirt on shoptyt.com, so that's also fun. Okay, yeah, it's good to see you. Let's do the next story. Let's start here.
Let's do it.
I am gonna be working on our behalf. I am gonna be telling the stories on our behalf. And you better believe I'm gonna be doing it with a little bit of joy, a little bit of enthusiasm, a little bit of energy, and a little bit of stick it to them. Because that's the Michigan way.
So how did that incredibly strange woman wind up as a U.S. representative and now potentially a senator? That's because she's, as you saw in that clip, gotten over $20 million from the Israeli lobby. That is, they don't like to show her. They like to show ads, as we'll show you in a minute, where she's not in it really. They've got pictures, etc. Because if you see her, you don't want to vote for her, right? But wait till you find out how much they spent on this election, and unfortunately, how it's helped her take the lead. So Yaz, tell us about that.
Yeah, it's probably a good call to leave her out of the ads as much as possible. But that was Representative Haley Stevens. And with the help of AIPAC and the Israeli lobby, she has now surpassed Abdul El-Sayed in the latest round of polling coming out of Michigan, which is crazy. And according to the latest news from a Detroit News, from a WDIV TV poll that was released just yesterday, Haley Stevens now leads by nearly 7 points above El-Sayed. So this is what it says. The poll was conducted last week and it showed 48% of voters supporting Stevens compared with 41% for El-Sayed. Stevens had a particular lead with Black non-college educated and Detroit area voters. El-Sayed had the advantage with college educated and white voters, especially those who consider themselves democratic socialists. But there's a little bit of a caveat here. The Stevens-El-Sayed contest tightens to a dead heat when considering primary voters who say they're definitely committed to voting for one candidate or the other, with 34.1% identifying as definite Stevens supporters and just 33.7% as definite El-Sayed supporters. And Stevens leads in the top line numbers of the survey because of the 14% of poll respondents who will probably vote for her, compared with just 8% who say they will probably vote for El-Sayed. And that's according to pollster Richard Chuba. And he said that neither candidate has sealed the deal at this point. So it gets a little bit tricky. It really depends on how you look at the numbers. But here is what Chuba had to say to the Detroit News. He said, "My assessment of this race is Haley Stevens has an advantage on paper, but when you look at those voters that are definite about who they're going to vote for, it's tied. So it's not as cut and dry as it sounds. Not all is lost yet. There's still hope for Abdul El-Sayed." And the poll was a statewide telephone survey of 500 likely Democratic primary voters, and it was done between July 8th and July 11th. This boost comes from not only the fact that Mallory McMorrow has decided to drop out of the race just last week, but also because there have been millions of dollars that were spent in advertisements for Stevens. So Stevens has benefited from an estimated $49 million worth of TV and streaming ads from outside groups this summer, either boosting her bid or attacking El-Sayed, according to the ad tracking firm AdImpact. That includes the United Democracy Project affiliated with AIPAC that is on pace to spend $4.6 million just over the next week. That is an unbelievable amount of money to just be dumped into someone's campaign, especially someone like this girl, like Stevens here. So very interesting, very excited to see how this is gonna play out. But according to Bernie Sanders, AIPAC is now spending 8 times as much as Abdul El-Sayed's entire campaign on the Michigan Senate primary. And this race is not between Abdul and Haley Stevens, it is between Abdul and AIPAC. The billionaire-funded super PAC should not determine American elections or foreign policy. Let's all support Abdul. But there is one more thing. Remember how we said that Stevens was polling well with Black voters? That is also because of ads that were put out by the United Democracy Project, making it seem like she was endorsed by the Obamas. It's very misleading. She wasn't endorsed by them. Here is one of those ads.
Haley Stevens, Chief of Staff for President Obama's auto rescue, saving over 200,000 Michigan jobs.
And Haley Stevens, by the way, she was there. She was a critical part of my team that helped the American auto industry come roaring back.
In Congress, Haley successfully fought to cap the price of insulin at $35 a month. Now she's fighting back against Trump's Medicare cuts. Haley Stevens, a proven fighter for Michigan.
Yeah, so that was the ad. And Black voters in Detroit are saying that ads featuring President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama are part of the reason that they're voting for U.S. Representative Haley Stevens over Abdul El-Sayed in the race for the Senate seat. Even though Obama has not weighed into the race between Stevens versus Sayed, several voters told the Chronicle over the weekend that they thought he did. So the ads are working. Also, DW and Donna Mills of Troy told Michigan Chronicle at the African World Festival at Hart Plaza last Saturday that they're voting for Stevens because of her work with Obama. DW said him and his wife had seen her ads on TV and understand there's a lot of money being put behind her. So if you understand that there's a lot of money being put behind a candidate, it would behoove you to investigate who is putting all that money behind that candidate. And I really just want our voters to be as informed as possible. But according to Jonathan Kinlock, the chair of the 13th Congressional District and Wayne County Commissioner, who also, by the way, appeared in one of the Obama/Stevens ads, he told the Michigan Chronicle, the ad is about Haley being a part of the auto industry bailout. That's all the ad is saying. Whether Obama weighed into this election, I was told that if you're going to come to the party, you need to be dressed for the dance. What does that even mean? The ad isn't about this race, it's about what she did leading up to the race. Okay, but if you pair the ad that you just watched with this ad that is painting El-Sayed as a misogynist, here's, I don't know, do what you want with this.
Leaders of Democratic women's groups call Abdul El-Sayed's attacks on Haley Stevens sexist and the same tired playbook used against women. That's what El-Sayed does. El-Sayed called Michelle Obama's work uninspired and ineffectual. He claimed Gretchen Whitmer was bought and sold, and an employee said they were offered payment to keep silent after witnessing El-Sayed disparaging women. Let's reject Abdul El-Sayed's sexist attacks. UDP is responsible for the content of this ad.
Okay, so that was the ad, obviously depicting El-Sayed in a really, really bad way. But in 2010, El-Sayed wrote in The Guardian that the First Lady's Let's Move campaign was commendable, if ineffectual. El-Sayed said the efforts should be more focused on addressing structural and societal factors and dealing with obesity rather than individual habits. And the opinion piece went without mention of Obama's gender. So there's a lot going on here. This is obviously a smear campaign. We know that it's being funded by AIPAC. Millions and millions of dollars, Cenk. This is unbelievable, but also not unbelievable at all.
Yeah, so since Bernie said it's 8x of what Abdul's spending, It has now become 20x. They've put $50 million into this race. Abdul only has 2.5. So now let's talk about why this kind of strategy works. The number one reason is because the media never tells the citizens what's actually happening. So the people running the ads about how Haley Stevens is in favor of black people and Obama loves her, etc., they're not black and they don't care about black people. They're the Israeli lobby. And a lot of what they're saying isn't true, as Yaz just showed you. The ones running the ads about, oh my God, Abdul is sexist or something, and he's against women, again, not true, but it's not a women's group. Again, it's the Israeli lobby. So if the media was doing its job, they would say, oh, by the way, it's important for you voters to know, the local news can cover it, radio can cover it, the newspapers can cover it, the national news can cover it. Here, we're covering it here. This is a national news program. But the rest of corporate media goes, no, we will never tell the citizens what's actually happening. So we're gonna pretend that he has those issues when we know he doesn't. We know those are based on lies. Like, for example, Michelle Obama's program he called commendable. Commendable, but they left that part out. So, and by the way, if you're not getting it, they know they can't win by telling you that, hey, the senator from Michigan shouldn't serve Michigan, they should serve Israel, right? So instead they tell you, he's a sexist, women, don't vote for him. Same exact strategy they use against every outsider, especially progressives. Remember the Bernie Bros strategy? Oh, they're all sexist, they're all Bernie Bros. Women, you can't vote for them, you can't vote for them. And was that women's groups? No, it was, in that case, it wasn't just AIPAC, it was also tons of corporate lobbyists who didn't like the idea that Bernie Sanders might increase their taxes or regulate their businesses and might look out for the average American. So what do? They try to manipulate you by saying that he's against women. They do it every single time, and the media never tells you what's actually happening. Is the media telling everybody, oh, by the way, AIPAC is spending tens of millions of dollars here to trick you, to manipulate you into voting for Haley Stevens? Now, what has Haley Stevens said in the past? She is, because they're painting out her as like, they say, and they look at the trick the media does. I've read stories in the local papers and the national papers, all over the national papers, about this campaign. And they say, Haley Stevens' message is that she's the tougher fighter against Trump and that she's more electable in the general election. Okay, that's her message. You're a reporter, so is it true? No, they never tell you if it's true or untrue, because it isn't true. What did she do to fight Trump? Nothing. How is she more electable? She's not more electable. 60% of the voters are against her policies on Israel and her taking corporate PAC money and all of those things. And they say, well, the corporate Democrat is more likely to win elections. Really? Where's your proof on that? Because they just lost to Donald Trump twice. So how are they more electable? That's just a lie. And if you're wondering why does the media lie to help the forces of evil and to help manipulate them into voting for the wrong candidate, where do you think the $50 million went? It went to local media. So that's their top donor, their top advertiser, I should say, right now in this year. For all of those local news stations in Michigan, their number one advertiser is AIPAC and the Israeli lobby. So that's why they never tell you, because they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. So you see how the media and the lobbies work together to try to trick you. Because yes, if people really knew Haley Stevens' record, where she says, I went to Congress to serve Israel, and Israel came to me in my dreams, and that's who I'm representing. If they knew that Abdul was for higher wages and universal health care and all the things that would help them, this race wouldn't be close, it'd be 80-20. And instead we live in this deeply corrupt system with a deeply corrupt media who's literally financially incentivized to, instead of doing the news, to lie to the voters.
Yeah, and we've seen this before, so we know how this can go. We know how seriously we need to be taking this. And money talks, and money very much can buy elections. We've seen it happen. We know that this is a thing that we need to be on the lookout for as we head into the midterms. But the fact that it's July and we're already seeing 20x campaign funding going into ads for Haley Stevens of all people, like how is this the candidate that they ended up with trying to get a Senate seat? Look at what just happened to Thomas Massie. We have to be very careful. This is why so many of our elected officials or even candidates don't speak out against the establishment, don't speak out against Israel, because they are afraid of this exact type of retribution. They're afraid, or I think what a lot of them try to do is try to like toe the line. Like if I don't say anything, then they won't come after me, but also now people aren't going to vote for me because now funding for Israel and support of Israel is something that voters want to hear. Which side of the aisle they're of the Israeli aisle specifically, which side of that aisle their candidates are on. And it's just gonna get worse as we head into the midterms. They're just gonna get more and more aggressive. And personally, sometimes I forget how effective these ads can be because I have ad blockers everywhere and I don't watch television unless I'm like in a restaurant or something like that. But a lot of voters, especially older voters, are still watching regular cable news. They are seeing these ads, they are being influenced by them, and they're not gonna get on their phones and Google the candidates. They're just gonna be like, whoa, look at that. That guy doesn't seem very nice, or oh, look at this person, she's endorsed by Obama. The people have already said that they are voting for this person specifically because they thought she was endorsed by Obama. That is how powerful these ads can be. And especially like they know what they're doing, right? They know when they're being misleading. They know that they're trying to draw some like positive correlations between her and the Obamas. And that still works with a very specific demographic in a certain part of this country.
Yeah.
So we can't let our foot off the gas.
Yeah, I just want to be super clear about how Israel buys congressional seats, and it's not a little influence. Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush had $14 million and $18 million spent against them. Tom Massie had $32 million spent against him, and now Abdul El-Sayed is having $50 million spent against them, all by the Israeli lobby. The great majority of that money, if not all of it. And all four spoke out against Israel. All four questioned Israel's funding. So and AIPAC brags after every one of those elections that they sent a message to Congress. In other words, if you don't kneel to Israel, we will try to eliminate you because we demand complete control of your Congress. So look. You see how disgustingly dishonest our corporate media is, and you see how they are great partners in deceiving you on behalf of these lobbies, including the Israeli lobby, but not just the Israeli lobby. They deceive you into saying that money in politics is not relevant when almost every election, 95% of the time in Congress, the person with more money wins. And it doesn't matter if they're a liberal or a conservative, it doesn't matter if they're a Democrat or a Republican. The only thing that matters 95% of the time is who has more money to buy the deceptive ads. But the ads don't just buy those particular 30-second spots, they buy the loyalty of the media companies that they're spending millions of dollars on. And those media companies lying to you on behalf of the Israeli candidates is what does the most damage. So those are the forces of evil in this country who are trying to manipulate you into serving a foreign country and corporate interests. So wake up, everybody. And if Abdul loses that election, Israel is going to celebrate, Netanyahu is going to celebrate. They're going to think, great, we're going to force them into another war and another war, and we're going to get even more money from them, and we're going to do even more genocides, and we're going to get the media to lie for us, and we're going to own their Congress completely. That election in Michigan is critical. If Abdul wins, despite the $50 million spent against them, then the Israeli lobby for the first time in our lives is in a little bit of trouble. So it's in 3 weeks. Make sure you vote, and if you're not in Michigan, make sure you talk to people in Michigan, find people in Michigan. We're having to do the hard task, send them this video. So we're having to do the hard task of telling people one by one in Michigan because corporate media is all lying to them. So go vote for the Americans, not for the Israelis. We'll be right back. Let's go to Super Chat first. Make It Make Sense says, Cenk, have you noticed this weird group of people who are against the war? They say they don't like how it started. With that said, they would rather see us conquer Iran than lose like Vietnam. Yeah, look, that's a split group. Half of them are, not half, I think probably just about a quarter, I'm guessing at the numbers obviously, are Israeli propagandists. They're not real MAGA or real Trump voters or whatever. And 3/4, like the majority of them, are people who said they were anti-war, but are actually part of the MAGA cult. So not all of MAGA, not all the Republican voters, not all Trump voters are part of the cult, but some are. And so where they're like, oh, Trump's gonna keep us out of the Iran war. Trump attacks Iran, and they're like, we love war, so we're now gonna have to win. They're just lying to themselves. Like Democrats were lying to themselves about how Joe Biden wasn't senile. These people are like, oh yeah, pro-war means anti-war. Okay, brother, whatever gets you through the night. But that's why they're doing that. Harv 830 says, last night I attended a speech by federal judge Roy K. Altman in support of Israel. He literally sounded like Patrick Bet-David or another con man. The room was full of older Jews who just ate it up. Yep. Look, 2/3 of Jewish Americans are against the Netanyahu government. 1/3, honestly, are insane. They're in a Zionist cult and they'll eat up anything. And they are largely older Zionists. And yeah, they're like, yeah, the Palestinians made us murder their kids. They had it coming, we had to murder them. They're lunatics, total, utter lunatics. So they'll eat that stuff up all day, all night. And they're a huge problem. But all right, we'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk and Yaz with you guys. Just want to read 2 quick super chats here. Schroeder and his dragon said, keep fighting the fight, been with you for a decade. My college logo is the truth shall set you free. So that's Caltech, by the way. I love that logo. My whole life is based on the truth shall set you free. So thank you, brother, for being with us for 10 years and for writing in. And then Cliff Campen, super generous, really appreciate your brother, said time to keep supporting TYT. If ever there was a time, this is the time. So thank you for doing that, and your contribution makes a big difference. We really love you for it. All right, guys, now if you're either in Medicare or you've got a loved one in Medicare like I do, this is really important, okay? So you know us, we hate scams, especially ones that target seniors, unbearable. Medicare, unfortunately, is chock full of them. You got commission-hungry brokers steering people towards plans that pay them better. They're not actually looking out for you, they're looking out for themselves because they get higher commission on it. So we found the one group that is not doing that, and that's actually looking out for you, and we confirmed it, it's Chapter. So, they're independent Medicare advisors. They compare every plan nationwide. They find the best one that's out there for you. And people who switched with Chapter last year saved an average of $1,100. And we have had paying members and viewers say yes, they switched and saved all that money. Or this is beautiful. Sometimes they tell you, oh no, you're already on the best plan, so you don't have to do anything. So that shows you that they are in fact honest. So it's free, under 20 minutes. Skip the scams and call Chapter today, 805-201-2275 for Medicare help you can trust. That's 805-201-2275. All right, so now let's go to our next story.
Israeli civilians are dying in these attacks because of the apartheid. You know, Palestinians have a right to kill Israeli soldiers, Congressman? On October 7th, when they attacked the military bases in the Gaza envelope, did the Qassam brigades and Suraya al-Quds have a right to kill Israeli soldiers? Yes or no? On October 7th, did Palestinians have a right to attack Israeli military bases in the Gaza envelope? Yes or no?
I mean, I think October 7th attack was a terrorist attack, so I don't justify.
Was it a terrorist attack when the first targets that were hit on the morning of October 7th were multiple military bases? Did Palestinian forces have a right to attack those military bases?
I am not for violence again in any way. I mean, I am for making sure that we end the occupation. Do they have a
right to do it, Congressman? Do they have a right to attack Israeli soldiers?
No, I'm not going to say that Hamas had a right to attack Israeli soldiers or kill Israelis. Like I don't think that advances peace or advances Palestinian statehood.
So now Khanna is getting attacked on all fronts. So he went to the West Bank, try to find out how Palestinians live and unfortunately suffer. Mainstream media has been attacking him 24/7 for doing it. How dare you care about Palestinians, right? Now that's Jeremy Scahill of Drop Site News attacking from the other side, saying, why don't you say that the Palestinians have a right to attack Israeli soldiers? Mm-hmm. Yes, man, tough to catch a break if you're Khanna these days.
Yeah, it really is. And I admire him for persisting through all of this. So that was Khanna, and he sat down for an interview with Drop Sites. You saw on that clip, it was Ryan Grimm, Jeremy Scahill, and Maisa Mustafa. And the conversation was generally pretty friendly enough, right? Congressman Khanna is relatively ideologically aligned with Drop Site, but when it came to Scahill's probe about a universal standard being applied to killings in the region, that is when things started to get a little bit tense. So let's take a look at some more.
Does Israel have a right to drop a single bomb on Gaza in response to October 7th?
I believe Israel had the right to get people who killed the civilians, but not in the way they went about it, which I've said is genocide.
But the Palestinians don't have a right to attack the very military bases that are running the killing operations on October 6th, 2023, or October 5th, 2023. It's a double standard. You're saying there are ways that Israel should be able to kill Palestinians, but there is never a condition under which Palestinians can attack armed, uniformed soldiers of a force that is still considered an occupying force under international law. I don't make it make sense to me.
Okay, so the exchange got a little bit better when Roe pointed out that the power differential that exists between Israel and Palestine makes a nonviolent response necessary, and that by extension, it helps regarding America's shifting view on Israel's relationship to Palestine. So let's watch that.
Because I think that the armed resistance is only going to be ineffective given the power differentials. It's similar to what Gandhi thought in terms of how he took on the British Empire, and that having a moral force of civil resistance and appealing to the world's conscience is going to be much better chance of getting dignity and peace.
2019, the Palestinians organized the Great March of Return, which was a mass nonviolent mobilization at the gates of the concentration camp walls and fence in Gaza. And you know what Israeli soldiers did, Representative Khanna? They had a competition to who could shoot the most kneecaps of Palestinians.
Well, I think that
I were backed by Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas. So there's a track record and there's a context. You're talking about tactical issues. The Palestinians have tried that. The Palestinians did.
I think opinion is down. I think opinion is shifting now in America, where those kind of approaches would get a better reception in the United States.
So as you might expect, over on X, the Israel firsters were losing their mind over this interview. And here is Todd Richmond. Here's what he had to say. He said, "This is one of the most unbelievable interviews I have watched since October 7th. The hate spewing and justification for Hamas attacks on Israel from Jeremy Scahill on this Drop Site News is unreal." And Ryan Grimm just sitting there saying nothing of these questions, and Khanna continuing to participate in this questioning and giving credibility to this hateful interview is sad to see. Yes, Jeremy and your supporters, please justify October 7th on these soldiers. And then if you and your followers are not sick to your stomach after seeing these soldiers murdered, go see what they did to the concert goers at the Nova Festival in Ram. And then there is also this from Julie Roginski. She said, "Did Khanna not think that the leopard would eventually eat his face when he hitched his star to these terrorist cosplayers?" Oh my God. All right, so with all of that, Khanna has been very willing to engage on this issue and stick through a very tough interview with Scahill, and it might reveal something of his character that could be compelling to voters, and that might come in handy. He didn't run, he didn't cry anti-Semitism, and he didn't get overly defensive. He just engaged with Scahill, which I think is the way to do it. He didn't get flustered or anything like that. This is in conjunction with him bringing awareness to all of the settler violence that has been going on over there after being stopped on a trip to Palestine, along with his continued critique of Israel and his support of Massey's bill to end foreign aid to Israel. And all of this makes him a very compelling figure for Israel-wary voters in 2028. Very encouraging, Cenk, to have somebody like this who is out there in Congress representing some people in this country, at least. He's a good voice to have out there. What are your thoughts, Cenk?
Yeah, so look, this one's a tough one, but there is a way to solve who's right here, right? Because people often forget two things can be true at the same time. So is Jeremy Scahill's point about the double standard correct? Yes, it is, okay? At the same time, is Roe's point that a peaceful approach to this is the better approach? Yes, he's also correct. So so the Israelis murder innocent Palestinian civilians all the time. They have an 83% civilian kill ratio. It's the worst of any terrorist group in the world. So if you're talking about terrorism, the Israelis are the worst terrorists there are. The government is, right? The IDF is. There's no question about it. Those are the actual IDF numbers that were leaked to the Israeli press. And it is worse than Hamas's civilian kill ratio and worse than Hezbollah's. They intend to murder civilians and they murder them at about 100 times the rate of Hezbollah and Hamas. So that is definitely true. And if you're fighting to protect your land, as Hezbollah is right now in Lebanon, that is not terrorism. It's not even close to terrorism. The Israelis have marched in their fascist soldiers to take the land and the homes of those people. The people whose homes are being taken have every right in the world to kill those soldiers and to do anything they like with those soldiers within the laws of war. We believe in following the laws and human rights and all the right things, and we don't believe in doing war crimes. But do they have a right to kill the soldier who's trying to murder them and take their homes? Of course they do. That's a fact, right? But our press, generally speaking, is so deeply racist, so deeply bigoted against Muslims. They hate Muslims so much. And by the way, these days, Christians that are in Lebanon, Gaza, and West Bank, they go, no, they have no rights. They only have a right to be murdered by the Israelis. They can never defend themselves. And if they defend themselves, they're terrorists. But why? Why? The label terrorist clearly applies to Israel more and does not apply at all when you're defending your own land and territory. So they go, yeah, I know, but I hate Muslims and I want you to hate Muslims so that Israel can take more of their land. Okay, yeah, that's what, so that Scahill's criticism aimed towards American media or other American politicians is perfectly justifiable. But Khanna's not in that camp. Khanna is the only congressperson that went to the West Bank to hear their side of the story, while all the others are going to kiss the wall and kiss Netanyahu's ass and taking all these BS propaganda things. What are you beating up on Khanna for? Literally the very best person in Congress on this issue, right? Now, having said that, I still agree with Roe, which is this peace is the right way to go. Jeremy's not wrong about what happened in the March of Return. And another reason why our national media is a bunch of monsters. They're deeply immoral people. So the Palestinians did it the right way, the peaceful way, and the Israelis slaughtered them. That's where Shireen Abu Akleh was killed. That's an American journalist, and a sniper shot her in the neck and murdered her. CNN and American government acknowledged that it was an assassination of an American journalist, and they said, oh, that's okay, Israel gets to do it. Israel gets to murder anyone they like. Israel gets to be terrorists. Israel gets to murder American citizens and American reporters, and we're not gonna complain about it, and it's all the Palestinians' fault. So we know, Jeremy, we all know the American media and 94% of the politicians in America are disgustingly racist. They despise Muslims, and they have a total double standard. But the guy who least deserves that criticism is Khanna, and despite all of that, if we go towards violence, we're never ever going to win. And not only is it not the moral path, it's also not the strategically correct path. So John Brown didn't win, Martin Luther King won. So, okay, it's a needless debate to have with Ro Khanna. You should be having it with others. I get the frustration probably of Jeremy that no other politician will talk to them because they're all not all, but almost all of them are disgusting liars for Israel. But he's taking it out on the wrong guy. And the politics of it is, I mean, look at the Israel first attacks Roe because he didn't walk out in a rage over the interview. If he had agreed 1%, forget Israel first, all of establishment media would be like, yes, let's destroy Ro Khanna on behalf of Israel, right? And he didn't give him that opportunity. He's absolutely right. Don't give him that opportunity. Mainstream media, again, are evil. They're the bad guys. But a lot of people in America don't know how evil corporate media is. They don't know that every cable news actor is lying on behalf of Israel. They don't know that every one of them will attack Ro Khanna, maybe minus Chris Hayes, but that if given the opportunity. And look at this disgusting Todd Richmond, who's like, how dare you attack our soldiers? Dude, Israel murdered 23,000 Palestinian children, dropped a bomb on them, incinerated them, decapitated them. There was a video with a literal decapitated child. But Todd Richmond thinks, oh, those are only Palestinians. Murder them, slaughter them, right? Right, Todd? Right, Todd? You don't give a goddamn about that, right, Todd? All you care about is, oh, my feelings have been offended. You can't attack our soldiers. Well, how about when you were occupying the Palestinians for 58 brutal years and you murdered and you kept them hostage? Israel kidnaps Palestinians, thousands of Palestinians. Every year they stuff them into their gulags, their torture camps. No charges filed, no trials because they are a fascist government, okay? And then the Todd Richmonds of the world are like, yeah, of course, those Palestinians are subhuman. We are the chosen people. We get to crush our opponents, destroy the Palestinians, murder them, kidnap them. And our disgusting, lying, racist media comes out and goes, oh yeah, oh my God, Israeli hostages kidnapped. And we go, I agree, that's terrible, don't kidnap the Israelis. Thousands of Palestinians kidnapped, no charges ever given. Murdered, 10 Americans killed, nonstop. And our media goes, I don't see it. Oh, they're just subhuman Palestinians. They're not the chosen Israelis who should be sanctified. No, Jeremy, I agree with you. Their soldiers are not more important than the Palestinian civilians. The Israelis are sick terrorists. Now, having said that, you don't do like they do. The right answer is not to match them. And I know Jeremy's not saying that, okay? But the right answer is peace and civil disobedience and getting people to understand that the real terrorists are the Israeli soldiers who are doing all of that, murdering, hostage taking. And yes, the occupation is obviously apartheid. How do you keep 5.5 million people in concentration camps? Now they've taken 70% of Gaza because they are thieves. And Todd, it's not because they're Jewish. That has nothing to do with it. 2/3 of Jewish Americans are against the current Netanyahu government. It's only radical Zionists who say, yeah, slaughter the Palestinians and take their land. We are owed everything. We're owed America's money. We're owed Arab land. We're owed all of it. No, you're not. You're a bunch of monsters. These radical Zionists who say that we should slaughter all the Palestinians. And our media is disgusts me. So obviously you can see how mad I am about it, but the guy who's trying to make a difference on that is Ro Khanna. So he's the guy who deserves this least of all. But yes, if we had any honest people in media, they would ask those same questions and a hell of a lot more to the other politicians, but they'll never ever do that because they all work for Israel.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, the fact of the matter is, and I think that Ro Khanna actually mentioned this in one of those clips that we played, the American people are less and less pro-Israel. This is the least pro-Israel this country has been since Israel has been a country. And the American media is on both sides of the aisle really is doing its absolute damnedest to paint Israel in a kind, sympathetic light. And it is just not working. It's not working the way it used to before. Perhaps they took it for granted before, but it is not working, not at all anymore. And this sort of goes back to the last story that we were talking about with AIPAC spending tens of millions of dollars in the Michigan race to defeat Abdul El-Sayed. And the fact that they have to spend that much money, the fact that they feel that they need to spend that kind of money on these races should be very encouraging. In the end, sure, there is still a chance that we might end up with another pro-Israeli congressperson. And once they're in, we know it's very difficult to get them out. But as of right now, they're desperate, and that is worth celebrating.
All right, guys, we're gonna do a bonus episode when we come back for the members. So hit the join button below on YouTube or tyt.com/join. We will certainly have lighter topics for you guys, and we'll also have. China has done something curious about chatbots. You're gonna be amused by that story. I'm gonna try to calm down in the meanwhile. The idea that we should care about the feelings of Israeli soldiers. Oh, really? Oh, how about the German soldiers from the 1940s? Were they the real victims? The F out of here. All right, we'll be back.
Hot dog is my favorite meat.